As a result, Gonzalez was no longer able to participate in SSP Alliance operations and was allowed to take refuge with the Inner Earth Anchar group, the same group that the priestess Kari is a member of. The event deeply disturbed Gonzalez, who lost touch with his focus and sense of life purpose based on statements he made to Good after their reunion. After the chemical interrogation, Good's memories were wiped and he was returned to his home in Texas. It was Kari, the Inner Earth Anchar priestess, who was able to help him regain his memory of the whole abduction experience, and she also informed him of the fate of those who had been identified during his interrogation. Gonzalez was very upset, feeling that Good had betrayed him, despite the fact that it was completely against Good's will. This caused their relationship to suffer, and prior to regaining his memory of what happened in the abduction, Good spent several weeks wondering why Gonzalez was so unkind. While taking refuge with the Anchar, Gonzalez went to 2 ancient builder race outposts on the planet Venus and near Jupiter, attempting to gain access to information or technology. In both instances, he was denied entry because he lacked humility. Later he acted in a duplicitous fashion towards his Anchari hosts, violating several boundaries that they had set for him. He was caught wandering into restricted areas and was apparently conducting reconnaissance, all of which eventually led to the Anchar asking him to leave. Thereafter, Good was told that Gonzalez was sent to the Mayan breakaway group for healing. Good received no word of what had happened to his former colleague until the meeting with the Blue Avians that took place in mid-2016, the same meeting covered in this update series. Gonzalez was present and Good could tell he had been completely changed by whatever the Mayan group was able to do for him. Good was a bit anxious to see Gonzalez, unsure of what to expect from his former friend. Gonzalez was calm and had a pleasant, serene look about him. During the initial part of this reunion, Gonzalez became serious and apologized for his callousness, saying he was in a triggered state and not in a good place. Good felt that Gonzalez wanted to be forgiven and offered up absolution, which seemed to restore their former camaraderie. Gonzalez shared that when he was with the Mayan group, they offered him something very special to know who he had been, who he was now, and who he will be. Good had received a similar offer from the ancient builder race Sentinel when he and Kari traveled to Venus during the Antarctic reconnaissance mission, but turned down the offer. Good was given a chance to know this about himself from Kari and the Blue Avian Ratir EIR, but declined in each instance. Kari didn't seem to be surprised by Good's rejection of this consciousness-transforming information, saying that stubbornness follows him through all his incarnations. Good said he turned down the offer because he was told it would cause a profound change in his consciousness, enabling him to see things very differently, which would alter the nature of his personal relationships as a result. Good could now see just how thoroughly such knowledge would affect someone, as Gonzalez was given new eyes as a result of accepting the offer from the Mayan group. Good was under the impression that the knowledge had something to do with Gonzalez's past life and his soul mission or destiny. This soul knowledge, in addition to other healing received by the Mayan group, seemed to restore Gonzalez to a state of psychological health, most likely to a degree he had previously not experienced. And due to the fact Gonzalez sought forgiveness, it suggests that such knowledge allows one to see the wisdom of honorable dealings and restoration of common trust normally attendant with the understanding of objective morality and sovereignty, which will be discussed later. Gonzalez shared with Good that he had always been very focused on finding a way to act for the greater good, and joined the military for that purpose as service to others' intention. And this noble intention had been corrupted due to the trappings of egoism that come with working for a nefarious group like the secret space program. Gonzalez encouraged Good to accept the offer of knowing himself should he be presented with it again in the future. As an aside, Good has said many times in the past that the SSP Alliance is not a totally benevolent organization, and was heretofore working for the Cabal. Presumably, their current intention to free those enslaved by the Cabal have not purged them of their service to self-distortions. Gonzalez said that he would remain with the Mayan group and no longer work with the SSP alliance as a member of their ranks, retaining a degree of autonomy and freedom from the authoritarian hierarchy that likely caused his egocentric distortions of the past. Instead, Gonzalez would act as a delegate to other groups in the solar system for the Mayans, presumably due to the fact he had established rapport with many different groups and would be valuable acting as a liaison or diplomat. Gonzalez also provided information to Good about what was discussed in the previous episode regarding the battle that took place over the Antarctic. He added that there might be an opportunity to conduct operations that they originally intended but were unable to because Good and Wilcock failed to leak the data in time, as discussed in past episodes. Gonzalez also said that he was told the Cabal and other groups were looking to take refuge in the southernmost continent because of the pending solar sneeze, the stellar conflagration discussed by Wilcock as an energetic ascension. These negative groups apparently are unsure as to what exactly will happen during this event and, fearing the worst, attempted to flee to the outskirts of the solar system. But as was discussed in the previous episode, an unknown group, that Good suggests could be part of the Earth Alliance, attacked the pumpkin seed-shaped craft, forcing them back to their Antarctic bases beneath the ice. Interestingly enough, President Barack Obama issued an executive order to prepare for extreme solar weather, lending credence to the notion that the Cabal is expecting some kind of coronal mass ejection to destroy society as it currently exists. Good says that some of the scientific groups within the Cabal expected that the whole electrical grid would go down, leaving all of the surface population crippled and the parasitic elite unable to maintain control. They theorized that the fallout from this solar kill shot would devastate modern human life, and would take decades to recover from. But Gonzalez also said that the event would completely clear the artificial intelligence threat in the solar system, leaving a clean slate for the SSP alliance to disseminate new and presumably safer technologies to the people. These Cabal groups also expected the atmosphere to burn away, huge worldwide earthquakes and volcanoes would ravage the surface, and arguably cause untold death and destruction. In addition, the sun was expected to go dark for several days, in what sounds like the 3 days of darkness event. Wilcock discusses the Greek concept of ekpyrosis, which means giant fire, and is a sort of massive solar flare or event from the sunday. Philosophers throughout the ancient world believed that this solar event was going to take place in the future, presumably forming the basis of the Christian rapture. He also shares that in Zoroastrian traditions, the word frashokareti translates to making wonderful. But that the wicked, Cabal or evildoers who have been duped into such behavior, are burned up. Good adds that some of the more esoteric or spiritual groups within the Cabal might think that the solar sneeze is going to be a spiritual ascension as well, not unlike what many in the awakening community have come to expect. But the darker groups would want to hide from such a judgment day, bearing in mind that many of the ancient descriptions of such an event involve the purification of evil and the uplifting of the righteous. And as such, this suggests that those who have not prepared themselves spiritually would not enjoy the process at all. Good recalls that when he first arrived inside the blue sphere, where this meeting was taking place, he saw the cosmic scene outside and marveled at the slow movement of gigantic spheres moving outwardly from the sunday. Just after this discussion, Good noticed a blue sphere being, along with 2 blue avians and a golden triangle head being come closer to him, Gonzalez, and Ratirir. Gonzalez stopped speaking in mid-sentence and suggested that Good should speak with Tirir. Moments later, Gonzalez was whisked away by the blue orb, leaving Good standing alone with Tirir. Good continues saying that he and Tirir had a serious discussion about many things. Good noticed previous to this that the sun had been radiating waves of white energy in huge blasts that were presumably dampened by the network of enormous spheres woven throughout the solar system. He also noticed a second corona around the sun that was emitting what looked like bolts of electricity outwardly. Good was shown an image of one of the energetic waves hitting the Earth. As the pulse moved over, the magnetic field seemed to draw in the energy, pulling it back in towards the passing wave front and grounding itself into the north and south poles where it entered the core. Then ripples of energy flowed outwardly towards the surface. It appeared like waves but also resembled the aurora borealis. Good thought to himself as he stood there taking in the scene, how could these syndicate groups possibly believe that they could hide underground? TIR then tells Good that this is a pivotal time in the co-creative consciousness of the planet and that everyone on Earth is helping to decide what will unfold next, in some kind of collective consensus decision. Good was surprised by how much this was a factor in the events that are, and about, to unfold, as described by TIR. Even some of the non-terrestrial groups who are on Earth at this time are playing a part in this global choice or nexus point. In the update provided by Good of this meeting, posted on his website, he said that TIR discussed an optimal temporal reality. Good seems to think that this is what TIR was describing in regards to the collective consciousness making a choice. This reminded Good of the so-called Mandela effect, which he described as people experiencing different timelines evident by divergences in memory regarding past events. Good was contemplating this idea while TIR was describing this temporal reality choice, and the blue avian pulled out of Good's mind this thought, suggesting that this was indeed a very real phenomenon, adding that humanity is experiencing a merger of temporal realities. Good felt increasing anxiety from the magnitude of what he was being shown. And what TIR described next heightened this sensation. Good was told that if this energetic event were to culminate now, less than 300,000 people from Earth would be ready for harvest or ascension. TIR specifically mentioned the word harvest, a term used frequently in the Law of One to describe what many call ascension. Good and Wilcock discuss that in order for one to be harvested or evolve along the same line as the planet, which is ascending to fourth density positive or service to others, an individual would need to be 51% service to others as well. Good says that most people feel they have already prepared, or at least close, but clearly TIR's assessment suggests otherwise. Good contends in his discussion with Wilcock that the control system of Earth is a factor, such as mind control operating at many levels of society. Wilcock adds it is not humanity's fault, but that at many levels acquiescence is a major factor. This is due to the control grid's capacity to lead people into apathy, uncaring of what one's choices do to others, and therefore hampers individuals in finding the motivation to rise above the control system's temptations, a form of socially acceptable spiritual stagnation. Good says that the control grid has been weakening in that it no longer has the same all-encompassing effect, which means it is now easier to rise above the control grid for those brave enough to attempt doing so. He adds the technology used for this purpose, when operating at such a high setting, has deleterious health effects on some people, like near complete apathy likely when there is a lack of self-knowledge. The sun's energy is also affecting the control grid, preventing it from having the same effect it once had. Part of the reason for this limited harvest, Good says, is because the temporal realities have not finished adjusting yet, and once this takes place, it could make it easier for people to finally fully invest themselves in the service to others path. This would lead to a more likely optimal temporal reality where the majority of people become ready for harvest. Good emphasizes that one's choices are crucial in what is taking place. These things are not happening to the people but are being guided by them, implying that complacency and victim mindsets need to be abandoned for a proactive approach, helping to guide the Earth towards the optimal timeline TIR spoke of. Good asked TIR how one would determine if humanity had moved to the optimum timeline or not, and was told that if Wilcock and Good saw the world shaken around them that it would be a sign they were on the other than optimal reality. While standing in front of TIR, Good thought to himself what could possibly cause both of them to experience this. Wilcock suggests that a pole shift could cause highly destructive massive worldwide earthquakes, but this was not what TIR actually said. The choice would be a collective decision, not specific to Good or Wilcock alone, but due to the nature of consensus reality, they would be forced to live through a less than optimal timeline. Wilcock suggests that even if a catastrophic event occurred, people would be pulled out before experiencing physical death unless a death event would be needed to purge negative karma. Good seems to agree and says that this discussion was probably meant to be a wake-up call for humanity to push for working through karma and strive to be more service to others. Good says that disclosure is part of this process so that a shift in consciousness can take place and people can be given a chance to change. But the truths need to compel one to change are largely self-evident, already in a state of full disclosure, and therefore any lack of evolution as a result of limited disclosure is self-imposed, although this point of view is obviously unpopular due to pandemic victimization consciousness. After this discussion with TIR, another blue sphere flew in and Gonzalez appeared next to the two other blue avians and the golden triangle head being. Gonzalez made a joking remark about not being missed too much, which Good took as a sign he was happy. Wilcock says that this suggests the Mayan group's healing did not wipe away or completely transform Gonzalez, despite the fact he was obviously profoundly changed. He then took Good by the shoulder and moved away from TIR to continue their discussion. Gonzalez said that there was an ancient burial ground in Antarctica close to the place where Good had done his reconnaissance with Kari in the Inner Earth shuttle. In this location, they were finding remains of beings with elongated skulls, wide hips, and small rib cages, which sounds remarkably like descriptions of the Egyptian royalty from antiquity. Furthermore, these beings appeared to have been flash frozen in the ice. Wilcock asks if they were giant-sized humans, to which Good says they were normal in stature. The remains' age ranged from 18,000 to 60,000 years old. The age blocks mentioned before by Good were suspended in the ice as well, which he says could have been evidence of some cataclysmic tsunami event that preserved everything in the ice by way of some kind of rapid cooling event. Gonzalez also shared that during his time with the Anshar, when he was taking refuge after Good's abduction and chemical interrogation, he saw two Anshari priests walk through a cave wall as if there was nothing there. This happened on 2 occasions, and on the third he noticed a crack in the cave wall that allowed him to see the priests, who were speaking to a number of giants of varying heights. One of them was sitting on a large boulder holding his head in his hand, making groaning sounds. It was shortly after this event that Gonzalez was asked to leave the Anshar settlement. Gonzalez then went on to say that the negotiations with the Earth Alliance and the syndicate groups, the Cabal, were not going well. The Cabal wanted everyone to be pardoned, not just those who were unwittingly acting as agents or the lower-level people, suggesting that the Earth Alliance did not want to give clemency to those who were more morally culpable for wrongdoing. Gonzalez also said that the military intelligence groups were tracking Department of Homeland Security, DHS, assets that were preparing for social unrest throughout the United States. These groups heard that DHS was willing to stop any upheaval with extreme prejudice if needed. The military groups were placing covert operatives, secret agents, in various positions within shadow groups, those working to take actions against the Cabal, observing them so as to eventually prevent any actions from taking place. Gonzalez also said that the Cabal would not allow Trump to become president even if they have to stab him on Inauguration Day. It wasn't clear whether they believe Trump has positive intentions if elected. The Cabal's fear is that Trump cannot be controlled and that he could also make things difficult for the syndicates, and therefore must be eliminated. Gonzalez also shared that during the negotiations, the Cabal insisted that there would be no full disclosure, only a partial disclosure over a 100-year period, as discussed in previous episodes and updates. Much of the Earth Alliance agrees with the partial disclosure agenda and feels that any major document dumps will be irresponsible. But the SSP Alliance, as discussed in previous updates, think that moving forward with partial disclosure will be impossible. It has been agreed that any kind of data dump will need to be done in spurts, or else the cabal will shut down the internet to prevent dissemination. Gonzalez also said that the cabal was happy to have caused racial disharmony and riots in certain areas, hoping to cause more division in society in the future as a result of this initial foundational accomplishment. They also threatened to cause supervolcanoes to go off under the ocean and trigger an extinction-level event. And there were other grandstanding and threats made by the cabal as well, in their typical fashion. Wilcock adds that none of these catastrophic events will likely be allowed to occur, to which Good agrees, saying the cabal's attempt to start World War III has been unsuccessful. Gonzalez also says that the SSP Alliance wanted to offer some kind of olive branch to Good by having the Wrangler apologize to him in front of his peers. In addition, they offered Good a position with the SSP Alliance that would provide him more material support, but he would no longer be able to speak publicly in any capacity, the same offer the Wrangler made before, but without the threats that came with it. Good declined the offer for the second time. At this point, two blue spheres came to pick up both Gonzalez and Good. After arriving home, Good was contacted by Kari and told to prepare for visiting the ancient builder race site on Venus, the same one Gonzalez was denied entry to before. And so, Good spent some time preparing for the event, ensuring he had the correct humble energy needed to gain entry. Analysis. There are several noteworthy points to discuss from this update. Gonzalez transformation and knowing thyself. Gonzalez' transformation happened as a result of gaining profound knowledge about himself, his past, present, and future. And these changes seemed to make him more humble, kind, and honorable, which are all qualities of an enlightened being who has gained self-mastery and sovereignty. To know thyself is described in many traditions as an essential foundation for healing trauma and gaining the surety that comes from intrinsic self-knowledge. Without this foundation, one lacks confidence and composure that is part of knowing one's life purpose. But with knowledge and understanding, consciousness is empowered with clarity that facilitates harmonious co-creation, or what could be called wisdom in walking the path of service to others. In other words, before we can service others with precision and accuracy, we must know ourselves, and through this knowledge restore inner harmony that empowers us to harmonize our will with the will of creation, becoming an agent of the divine or Son of God in a Christian context. Perhaps this is what is meant by the inscription found on the Oracle of Delphi. I warn you, whoever you are. Oh, you who wish to probe the arcanes of nature, if you do not find within yourself that which you seek, neither shall you be able to find it outside. If you ignore the excellencies of your own house, how do you intend to find other excellencies? In you is hidden the treasure of treasures. O man, know thyself and thou shalt know the universe and the gods. Phrase inscribed in the ancient temple of Delphi. Life purpose, self-mastery and preparation for the outer work. Consider that if the universe is vibratory in nature, then we are beings of frequency, hence the term universe, which can be broken down to mean one, uni, song, verse. And this one song requires many players to perform, or many musicians who must know the piece of music well. In this sense, the creator acts as a grand conductor or maestro, ensuring all the musicians play in harmony together. But before a performer can play in the band or symphony, they must first have done the inner work of practicing and becoming familiar with their instrument, the vehicle they use to give life to their unique part in the musical piece. After these skills have been developed, a musician will be ready to play together with others, but not before. The musical score, within this analogy, is that unifying non-physical thing that allows each individual musician to find their place in the greater harmony of a performance life purpose or dharma. Within the scheme of creation, self-mastery is developed through life to master their dynamic self, the physical and mental instruments of the body and mind, which enables them to perform or live out their life purpose. Within a lawful context, one's mind and body is the estate entrusted by the Creator, grantor, to the creature, trustee, during incarnation, the thing that is needed to express the will of the universe. And the cabal use all manner of mind control techniques and legal frauds to get us to abandon our estate, meaning we never gain self-mastery. Then once we have been defeated, we become pawns of the system or matrix, knowing nothing else but the illusions of a false and sick society that we fight to protect, just like the Matrix film describes. Morpheus, the Matrix is a system, Neo. That system is our enemy. But when you're inside, you look around, what do you see? Businessmen, teachers, lawyers, carpenters. The very minds of the people we are trying to save. But until we do, these people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy. You have to understand, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. And many of them are so inured, so hopelessly dependent on the system, that they will fight to protect it. For Gonzalez, before this event, he did not have mastery of his mind or consciousness and was in a triggered state. Gonzalez told Good that he always wanted to help others, his life purpose or the musical score, but lacked mastery as to discern how to do this effectively. He, like many others with this life purpose, were duped into participating in nefarious organizations that seemed to be benevolent but were actually harming others instead of helping them. And because he lacked the mental discernment skills and emotional fortitude, bravery, to see how his actions were not truly servicing others, he acted in deceptive ways, most notably when he was in the Inner Earth Anchar settlement, performing reconnaissance missions that dishonored his agreement with his hosts. Within law, which in its purest form are the moral codes and rules that define honorable dealings of free will beings, he had violated their trust to complete what he thought was a worthwhile mission. This consciousness of confusion, lack of humility, and clear deceptiveness is not in concert with a truly service to others modality of being, which is most likely why he was denied entry by the Sentinel/Guardian at the ancient builder race outposts that he visited. But after he learned who he was, who he is now, and who he will be, he was able to gain a clear, coherent, and logical understanding of the mechanics of morality and how to walk the path of service, not just the intention of doing so in name only. In essence, he had what can be thought of as a full disclosure event at a personal level, and with this greater knowledge of self and the laws of morality or right action in the universe, natural or cosmic law, he realized the errors of his past and changed himself accordingly. It was this personal ascension event, so to speak, a shift in consciousness brought about by willingly choosing to know himself, that caused him to begin the process of restoring honor, harmony, with the universe and his life purpose of serving others in name and deed. Meaning, this caused him to apologize to Good and seek forgiveness, an action that a sovereign would want to do in order to get their house in order. Within law, a sovereign seeks to harmonize themselves with the truth as much as possible, and when errors or mistakes are made, restitution is required in order to restore trust, the basis of honorable co-creation. This is what true justice is all about, and why Gonzalez sought forgiveness so as to restore harmony and trust with Good. His behavior underscores the oneness principle described in so many works discussing natural or spiritual law. For ultimately we are all emanations of the same source of awareness, therefore evolution on a planetary level, which is where we are about to transition to according to many, requires recognition of objective morality and a population that realizes the fundamental oneness of all things. This is because ultimately separation consciousness, the basis of dishonor, breach of trust, and lawlessness controversy between individuals, is illusory and a product of limited knowledge, ignorance. Therefore, in order to realize humanity's full potential, and become the human organism, Gaia's awakened children, we must gain precise knowledge of self and the rules of creation, natural law and objective morality. Objective morality, mind and heart integration for knowing how to service others. The preceding points regarding morality, true justice, and honor are the specific mechanics each of us need to understand in order to further our polarization towards service to others. Mark Pacio and others refer to this concept as objective morality, which can be thought of as a precise logical and intuitive basis for actually becoming a sovereign being. When one gains enough knowledge of spiritual law, they are then responsible to use their powers of mind and body honorably, if they choose the service to others path. This means the universe authorizes karmic corrections or negative greetings as Wilcock and the law of one state, to help provide experiences to catalyze further evolution. In other words, knowledge of the truth and cosmic law gained must be used wisely, or else the universe will provide experiences that ensure the being learns their lessons. When one recognizes that this process is unfolding, they are beginning to understand what objective morality is, and with this knowledge they are held to a higher standard than those who have not yet evolved enough to make this choice. One cannot merely say the words "I am service to others" and expect to ascend. They must hold this noble intention while also seeking key knowledge and understanding to live it out to the fullest, always using self-reflection to verify if their actions are in harmony with their intentions. The process of gaining self-mastery and reaching for enlightenment is holistic in nature, incorporating the heart and mind as a balanced unified system of consciousness expression. In this way, one's initial intention to service others is reflected in experience, which must be contemplated and accepted, loved, in order to continue their training. Thus, the heart and mind working together are fundamental tools to one on the path of servicing others that eventually leads to a clear and concise understanding of objective morality, recognition of the rules of the universe described as natural law. When one lives out this knowingness with precision, it can be said that they have achieved a level of enlightenment and are sovereign to some degree. Without the heart's ability to empathize and feel, one's intentions may or may not service others. Without the mind's ability to critically analyze one's intentions and resulting actions, moral blindness and ignorance ensure one unwittingly harm others eventually. Both are required to truly know and walk the path of servicing others. And this goal of making oneself an instrument of universal consciousness is never truly complete, meaning the striving is an ever-present proactive process. In other words, no matter how much we have evolved, we can never delude ourselves by thinking we are already ascension worthy, for in doing so a stagnation and complacency insofar as self-evaluation and reflection takes hold. Spiritual stagnancy and the false New Age movement. Of course, the false New Age movement, which was originally developed by the Tavistock Institute decades ago, according to some researchers is founded on the belief that one doesn't need precise knowledge of the truth and harmonious action to become enlightened, they just need good intentions. Films like The Secret, and tenets described therein, have created a form of New Age nihilism and moral relativism where people indirectly believe that the truth is not really objective, merely a seeming condition of permanence created by social conformity. All we need to do is hold an intention and the universe manifests our desires. No knowledge or wisdom is required. Is a belief some who take up false New Age philosophies subscribe to. All of this acts like spiritual flypaper for the awakening masses who, by way of trauma, tend to avoid pathways of spiritual progress that require deep personal change and the challenges of gaining knowledge of objective morality. As a result, arguably most of the awakening population has fallen into honey traps of spiritual stagnancy, or on the other end of the pole are fear porn addicts looking for another outlet for repetition compulsion due to lifelong traumas. It is this place of spiritual stagnancy that many in the awakening community most likely are suffering from, having gained much progress and yet falling into an eddy of false evolution. This is understandable as, by comparison, the sleeping masses are much less evolved, and therefore we tend to consider ourselves as more awakened. In addition, the cabal seems to know that waking up causes one to feel driven to service and has provided a host of token outlets that allow one to believe they are being of service when in fact they are only making shallow steps forward, e.g. the false New Age movement. And finally, the social factor cannot be ignored because it seems human beings are programmed to look outside of themselves for reassurance they are on the path of goodness. But developing the ability to actually know if one is in service of others requires comprehension of objective morality, something that the false New Age movement will not allow within its heart-centric and mind-blind ideologies. In short, one must develop a personal and intrinsic capacity to discern the truth and in doing so understand that right action or objective morality is real and can be known. But this discernment is not achieved if the mind is abandoned for the heart and if ignorance is peddled as heart space knowing or getting out of your head and into your heart. To know the service to others path fully is to have precise knowledge and understanding culminating in the development of real and specific life skills. And while this might sound cold and calculating, it is through the emotional sensors of the soul that such truth-wise individuals integrate the specific with the holistic, developing an increasing sensitivity to the whole truth in all situations. In principle, one need only seek the truth and follow it wherever it leads, and indeed, people must strive for service but respect the truth of their actions by employing a self-reflective process to weed out deeds that are not of service to all. We must always be willing to reflect on our intentions and actions so we can let go of those things that are of less service and to take up those things that are of greater service, and in this respect, our work is never done. Even the blue avians, in their state of higher evolution, must be humble and acknowledge they too are students of the divine that ever strives to perfect the ways of the evolutionary creatures of creation. The ways of service are a narrow path. In reviewing the law of one recently, the following passage stood out as fundamental to understand that wholehearted dedication to service is needed for harvest or ascension. 17.33 Questioner: why is the negative path so much more difficult a path to attain harvestability upon than the positive? IMRA. This is due to a distortion of the law of one which indicates that the gateway to intelligent infinity be a gateway at the end of a straight and narrow path, as you may call it. To attain 51% dedication to the welfare of other selves is as difficult as attaining a grade of 5% dedication to other selves. Shall we say, sinkhole of indifference is between those two. This statement is essentially saying that it is just as difficult to progress in the service to others path as it is to follow the service to self path despite popular opinion. The discussion regarding the low ascension figure provided by TIR of 300,000 can be better understood when one comprehends objective morality, that our intentions and actions in all respects are considered, not just the ones we focus on. The statement resembles a Gnostic concept called the path of the razor's edge. The initiate must travel, with determination, along the path of the razor's edge. There are terrifying abysses on either side of this difficult road. On the difficult path to the dissolution of the ego, there are complex passages which have their roots precisely in the real path. Obviously, from the path of the razor's edge multiple paths diverge which lead nowhere. Some of them take us to the abyss and despair. There are paths which can transform us into the majesties of this or that zone of the universe. However, they can never return us to the bosom of the eternal universal cosmic Father. There are fascinating paths of a most holy, ineffable appearance. Unfortunately, they can only lead us into the submerged devolution of the infernal worlds. In the work of the dissolution of the I, we need to devote ourselves completely to the innermost Christ. At times problems appear which are difficult to resolve. Suddenly the path is lost in inexplicable labyrinths and we do not know where it continues. Only absolute obedience to the innermost Christ and the Father who is in secret can, in such instances, wisely guide us. The path of the razor's edge is full of danger, both inside and out. Samael Onweir, The Great Rebellion. Wading through the Christian verbiage, the statement can be interpreted to mean that in order to progress and evolve one must be vigilant against temptations to stagnate that encroach from all sides. As one evolves, their mistakes bring about greater pain and suffering, what we referred to earlier as a negative greeting, a kind of karmic correction the universe offers to help guide us back to the narrow path. The law of one refers to this as the sinkhole of indifference that essentially means every opportunity we have to act out our noble intention of service must be taken or else we depolarize, stagnate. For example, if we are on the service to self path, we must take every opportunity we can to harm and enslave others to our will. Conversely, if we are on the service to others path, we must take every opportunity to heal and act harmlessly towards others. But most of those who identify as service to others benefit directly from the hardship of their fellows, discussed more later, and tend only to be of service to those who have earned it. Volumes could be written on this topic, but in summary, service in either respect is proactive. If we are presented with an opportunity to act in the moment, we should not dismiss it by resting on our laurels or the seeming accomplishments of the past. We should not think because we acted kindly on Monday that our unkindness on Tuesday has no bearing on the situation. The universe holds those on the path of service to a very high standard, and the trap of indifference is to think we don't need to strive to be the most we can in all moments. 3 days of darkness and ascension or dissolution via entrainment and coherence. The 3 days of darkness concept is spoken of in many ancient texts, spiritual teachings, and even modern theories. In particular, Dewey B. Larson's reciprocal systems theory describes a universe wherein the speed of light is not an impenetrable boundary, a theory that was mentioned in the Law of One as one of the most accurate on Earth, at the time it was channeled. Instead, the speed of light is a point of unity where the material realms of space-time meet the metaphysical realms of time-space. Within this model, stars slowly accumulate energy and eventually reach a critical point when a quantum leap of energetic expression occurs, much like in cymatics when a precise pitch of sound causes sand on a vibrating plate to jump from one geometric orientation to another. Larson also states in his book, Beyond Space and Time, that living things have a material component in space-time, a body, and a metaphysical component in time-space, consciousness, and therefore are harmonic with other systems like stars and planets because they also have these components. This means that changes in the Earth and Sun's vibrational expression will directly affect all life because of sympathetic resonance or entrainment. Within this theory, the Sun is currently charging up like a capacitor, which will one day discharge as it evolves from a yellowish to white star. When this discharge takes place, enormous amounts of energy will be flung outwardly in all directions, moving faster than the speed of light, according to Larsonian theorists. It will cause a kind of luminous boom, not unlike a sonic boom made by an object as it passes through the sound barrier. The Sun's corona will fly out in an epic coronal mass ejection, pushing the luminous material we see into time-space, causing it to go dark for some period of time as the new energetic configuration of the solar system stabilizes. The energy that flows through time-space, which can also be thought of as hyperspace, is intimately connected to consciousness, and it is likely that these waves of energy will pour over the Earth and all other objects in the solar system, in a kind of magnificent consciousness tsunami. What effect this event will have on life is unclear, but the work of Dan Winter, an electrical engineer and consciousness scientist, for lack of a better term, suggests that as energy approaches the speed of light, it organizes along the golden mean ratio or Fibonacci sequence, becoming highly fractal as it compresses towards the light boundary. If one considers how fractally harmonic frequencies affect consciousness, Kundalini experiences, which occurs at certain points on the Earth's surface and in sacred structures like stupas, then it stands to reason the energy emitted from the solar event, and megacoronal mass ejection will be incredibly coherent or organized. The energy will be organized in frequency ranges that produce harmonics that are very potent and related to the same ranges life employs, both physically and mentally. And via the principles of entrainment, systems of motion, bodies and minds in this case, that are harmonic with a source of energy, will harmonize via sympathetic resonance, changing their expression to match the stronger signal. In short, the solar burst will retune all living systems in the solar system, but the governing principle of free will determines if the energy received causes positive reorganization or destruction. Ascension or dissolution via frequency entrainment. To better understand this concept of sympathetic resonance or entrainment, which is fundamental to the so-called ascension event, consider metronomes synchronizing. The metronomes are harmonically connected to each other, which means they have a structure that allows their motions to transfer just like our bodies and minds are harmonized with the Sun and Earth system. If the metronomes are open to receiving the frequencies and allow themselves to change accordingly, then when conditions are right, they will synchronize. Synchronization is the ascension or evolution principle. It means that a more organized system of motion will always change a less organized system. An example of this is in cymatics when sand on a plate changes geometry depending on the frequency emitted. Similarly, the Earth-Sun system will be supercharged with energy causing a shift in expression synchronizing the solar system with the galaxy. This is a changing of frequency, third density to fourth density in the law of one system, that will offer a similar choice down onto all living creatures. If one fails to do the inner work of raising their vibration and becoming more service to others stepping in concert with the earth, their instrument or beingness will not be properly calibrated and dissolution or destruction of the life vehicle will take place. But this is part of the harvest process, as the soul of such individuals will incarnate on other worlds where their personal evolution can proceed in harmony with their free will. As another example of this principle of entrainment that governs vibrational systems, consider what happened to the Millennium Bridge in 2000. In this example, when the bridge started to wobble, it made walking across it in an out-of-step fashion very difficult, and thus people began to follow the path of least resistance, walking in harmony with each other. In effect, the collective consciousness of those walking in step caused a synchronization pulse to radiate through the bridge, making it very difficult for those walking out of step to move across. Similarly, the collective consciousness of humanity is guiding this evolutionary process with the Earth itself as the strongest source of choice, for she has already made the decision to service others. Getting back to the bridge example, as long as one moved in step, walking was not that difficult. Conversely, if one tried to walk out of step, they would be pushed back and forth violently, eventually losing balance and might even fall down. Within this example, the Earth's choice to service others is the strongest signal, forcing everyone to either walk in step and therefore ascend, or walk out of step and burn up due to violent shaking. Those who fail to walk at all, those stuck in spiritual stagnation, the gulf of indifference, will suffer a similar fate as those who try to walk out of step, but as Wilcock suggested, they will likely experience a less violent transition. Only those who are walking with the same strength and potency as the earth are going to ascend, which means striving to be the most service to others as possible as the advisable course. An example of this destructive mechanism due to refusing to change, spiritual stagnancy, would be a glass shattering when a harmonic frequency is used at high amplitude. The pitch of the singer's voice sends waves of energy through the air at a rate that is harmonic with the glass's structure. This energy will be absorbed and expressed in the form of motion, causing it to vibrate rapidly. But since the glass cannot change itself to funnel the energy into transformation, changing its fundamental structure to accommodate the energy that we are calling ascension, it shatters due to inflexibility. Similarly, the evolutionary process for individuals is the same. We are being given a supercharged amount of consciousness energy by way of the solar event. If we are open and have done the proper work, this event will cause our mind and bodies to change drastically, just like the moving sand on a plate changes when the frequency is raised in cymatic studies. Stated again for clarity, the ascension is not happening to us but through us. The Earth-Sun galaxy system is merely providing us with greater amounts of consciousness energy, and it is up to us right now to prepare for this event and use the energy to either cause evolution towards fourth density positive or cling on to who we were, leading to violent shaking that destroys the body-mind vehicle. The energy received from the solar event will, like the glass shattering, be too much for the body to handle in its current third density state. As a result, if one has properly prepared by way of becoming service to others fully, they will use the energy to personally transform or transfigure the body into a new energy vibration, just like the sands did above when the frequency was raised. Therefore, our personal participation in this process is essential and retroactive. In other words, as musicians meant to play the symphony of creation, we can't wait till the last minute to practice. We need to work hard now and take every opportunity we can to gain skills so that when the moment comes we are ready to groove with the earth and ride the waves of solar evolution. However, those who refuse to change and grow, like the glass that could not alter its shape, will shatter and the body-mind vehicle will dissolve. These examples almost perfectly describe the energetic shifting process, which is a mechanic that acknowledges the free will of all involved, ensuring that those who really did want to ascend will do so, as long as they have done the required inner work beforehand. Again, a musician must prepare for a performance before it actually takes place. Finally, the energy received by the body and mind system will most likely be experienced in a unique subjective setting that allows an individual to experience this shift in a way that their free will can guide. It is possible that this will be felt as a kind of mass out-of-body experience or DMT trip, which some individuals who go through traumatic brain injury describe. A kind of soul shattering will take place during the 3 days of darkness, causing those who have failed to polarize enough, the undecideds, to dissolve and enter a dreamlike transition wherein they will materialize on a world more suited for their evolution. Those who are service to self will not be in harmony with the new Earth-Sun frequency and therefore experience a rapid dissolution of the life vehicle, like shattering a glass with sound, the conflagration described by ancient texts. But those who have polarized enough or tuned their minds and bodies will experience a profound cosmic event of incredible blissful splendor, a kind of cosmic tundra that, like Gonzalez, might show them who they were, who they are, and who they will become. And like him, this will profoundly shift their consciousness in ways that their current limited state can only imagine, much like one shakes off the fetters of a bad dream when waking from sleep. But to be clear, the above-mentioned descriptions are extrapolations based on Larsonian physics, the effect of coherence on the heart and mind as observed by Dan Winter and Heart Math, as well as suppositions of how extreme bliss states cause elevated levels of DMT to be released. At this stage, no one knows for sure what will happen. But it is arguably a good practice if one is seeking to ascend with the earth to constantly strive to become more service to others both in name and deed. Mandela effect, timeline splitting and correction, and the 300,000 ascension figure. The Mandela effect is the divergence of memory from recorded historical events, which some contend is evidence that timelines are merging or changing. Rotier seems to agree with the theory of timeline merging, which can be considered a form of correction once the concept of timeline splitting is understood within a context of consciousness evolution. The progress of the universe at large is the master timeline, so to speak, that entrains onto lesser systems that can break off from it via free will choice. In essence, humanity has broken off from the universal flow of evolution, slowing down our progress as a result. But eventually the entropy of disharmony causes divergent flows of time to rejoin the main source that we experience as the Mandela effect. Consider that time is like a river of flowing consciousness. Time itself is the agency through which individuals experience a change in space, and is therefore guided by free will choices. When one acts in ways that are dissonant or divergent from the flow of creation, described in religions as sin or going against the will of the Creator, this causes a temporary split to occur, a karmic correction timeline, wherein the individual can, through experience, slowly change and regain harmony with the will of creation. In other words, choices that are out of harmony with universal flow create divergent timelines where karmic corrections can occur and also create a quarantine effect so that the destructive actions of disharmonious choice do not cause entropy for the whole universe. For ease of discussion, let us consider that the will of creation is to service others, which is clearly described in many spiritual works, such as the Law of One. And if one considers that the human body is a symbolic representation of the universe as a whole, then when the cells of our body are working in harmony, servicing others, health is maintained. But when a cell chooses to service itself at the cost of others, then cancer and disease forms. Therefore, to service others, which is also a service to oneself, is the best course of action for any being, whether cellular life or human. And when one chooses this path, they rejoin the flowing rivers of evolution in creation, acting as a force that corrects divergent timelines. As an allegorical example, consider someone rowing a boat or kayak in a river. If they paddle with the flow of the water, they can move forward along the course with great speed and little effort, yet if one tries to turn around and go against the current, vast amounts of energy are exhausted. And it is likely that they won't actually move backward, only at best remaining at a fixed location. If evolution through time and space is forward progress along the river's course, then to turn against its flow means lack of evolution, and eventually, the body will give up in the effort. Now consider that if one paddles against the current in a precise way, they can expend less energy but create an eddy or swirling bubble of flow that moves in place but does not progress. It would give the rower a feeling that they were moving, but overall no progress would be made. This eddy or bubble would separate them from the flowing waters of the river, acting as a kind of quarantine against the current. This example is a good method of understanding how our planetary choices of mass consciousness have not only created a quarantine around the planet but also a split in the timeline that allows for the flowing waters of change to be suspended. The will of creation is to service others, and when we choose not to do that, we, metaphorically, spin in that eddy of water, which slows down our evolutionary progress and creates a separate bubble of time that allows karmic correction to occur. Since the universe is founded on free will, the Creator provided rules, natural law, and methods for allowing the creatures of time and space to swirl around in a state of evolutionary suspended animation, preventing their harmful actions from destroying the universe as a whole. And this is essentially where humanity has been for some time, arguably for thousands of years. Karmic corrections in the form of life lessons reveal to the individual the folly of servicing the self without wisdom, which is similar to stubbing one's toe or feeling pain as a result of making a mistake. The cook who forgets to put on an oven mitt will be more apt to remember to do so after having burnt their hand on a hot stove. The musician will work harder to learn their craft when becoming aware of an off note. People will feel the folly of lies and deception when their fellows cease to deal with them for breaking their trust. In this way, the universe is rigged for evolutionary growth, and unless one has worked very hard to become service to self, 95% in the Law of One system, eventually the flowing rivers of creation will cause their arms to become tired and turn the boat around to rejoin the current. This is probably why Good said in the past that any temporal realities that were created by time manipulation naturally correct themselves, which seems to be confirmed by other alleged insiders like Al Bielek in the Montauk testimony. In this sense, the human race has failed to gain mastery and has used their incredible powers of manifestation with selfishness and harmful actions. And even though this largely happened because of the cabal's machinations, we are still responsible for our actions. We always have the choice to not submit to slavery and tyranny. We have become cancer to the earth body with which we move, breathe, and have our being. And for thousands of years, we have been able to labor under delusions or ignorance pushed onto us by the cabal who know better. But now the engines of selfishness are losing steam, and the ship of our planet is beginning to slow down and turn around in the eddy of separation. And as a result, the bubble of divergent time that the cabal is trying to force through is losing energy, causing the timeline merging effect that Thierry spoke of. And like the entrainment example described above, the solar system where this quarantine operates, which was recently sealed by way of the outer barrier, is beginning to retune itself back to the will of creation, rejoining the flow of all that is. As a result, timelines appear to be merging, which we experience as the so-called Mandela effect. But it seems the optimal temporal reality has not yet been chosen. The sphere beings seem to be providing a buffer for this process, using the massive spheres as energy dampeners so that the Earth and those who haven't finished preparing yet can do so. And like Thierry said to Good, if this was not happening or if the harvest happened now, only 300,000 would be ready. All of this suggests that humanity's dispensation of mercy is coming to an end, and we must as individuals and as a species turn this ship around and stop fighting the flow of creation, learning the ways of objective morality and harmlessness that is the service of others' path. Most likely those of you who are reading these words are the cream of the crop that can through their trail-blazing actions encourage others to do the same. For if not now, then when? If not you, then who? Service to others, objective morality, and contractual reality. Let us now discuss what being service to others means and how this relates to the concept of objective morality. It is a very involved topic and we will focus on a few key points in this brief analysis. Morality in most people's minds is subjective. That is to say, what is right or wrong in our current estimation is often described as a personal choice. And in some respects, this is true, but within a universal law framework, right and wrong or morality is objective. We might justify our harmful actions from limited consciousness, but a sovereign has the knowledge of natural law to know with laser-like precision when their actions harm or help others. Free will is a primary distortion, as described by the law of one, which in this context means that one must consider the will of others when taking actions to manifest their desires. Recognition of free will choice is a key tenet of objective morality. Negotiating honorable contracts and agreements where we make our desires known to others, notice, is very important, especially when acting our desires means affecting others. In this way, when we benefit from the harm of others even if we aren't aware of it, a karmic debt is created. And only through gaining empathy and understanding of what happened, leading to reconciliation, forgiveness, can energetic balance and harmony be restored. It isn't enough to recognize harm is being done, we must actually take steps to change so that harm ceases and harmony is restored. For example, if we purchase clothing that was made in a sweatshop, where someone was forced against their will to make an item, a karmic connection is made. Similarly, when we consume foodstuffs that came from horrific conditions like in the meat industry, a karmic debt is formed. And only through knowledge and an earnest desire to reconcile can restoration be effected. What this means is that if you have ever benefited from the hardship of others, you have a karmic debt to work off, which at this time, seems to be building up towards some kind of grand disclosure event where humanity is clearly made aware of their past actions. In this way, we are now being given a chance to change as individuals and then pool our collective energies to change the status quo so that the harmful actions of society that have largely been ignored due to social conformity can finally be arrested, healed, and changed. We must find the courage to let go of our personal desires that hurt others, even if it means a drastic change to our way of life, such as a loss of social prestige. In short, the contractual nature of reality are the rules of creation that govern how free will beings interact with each other. When one chooses to realize their desires without considering the will of others, they are on the service to self path. When one acknowledges and harmonizes their will with others, sometimes choosing not to manifest their harmful desires, they are on the service to others path. All of this can be described with incredible precision using the principles of a contract, outlined in the below presentation. Law is a term that describes something that is immutable within a scientific context, and this same meaning applies within a consciousness setting, although it is not as obvious. Gravity can be ignored when we make steps in life, but the result of each step is always without fail bound by the rules of gravity. Similarly, free will's primacy can be ignored, but the manifested result of any action will always reflect the consciousness that was used to create it. If we seek to ignore the will of others, controversy or problems are sure to arise. For example, if you had an agreement with your roommate to clean up the dishes, by not doing so, your roommate might get upset and resent you, which might hinder further cooperation in the future. We can certainly choose to ignore this agreement to do the dishes, but the price is disharmony and separation. When we violate trust, failing to honor free will, we create a climate of mistrust, which is by definition separation consciousness expressed as a division of co-creative enterprises. We tend not to work with people we can't trust. All of this suggests that morality, the word that refers to conduct or behavior that is in harmony with recognition of free will, is objective. It is real and exists beyond merely our perception. Beyond intentions, self-reflection as a way to determine service to others. While our would-be masters would like us to believe that there is no such thing as objective right and wrong, and we get to make it up as we go along, moral relativism, in truth, when we dishonor our fellows, violate agreements, and act selfishly harming others, there is always a price to pay. Children easily recognize this common-sense principle of equitable dealings or trustworthiness. Objective morality is of prime importance when seeking to precisely understand what service to others means. While being nice is certainly a valid description, it is somewhat hazy. Someone can be nice when harming others, thinking that because they have a positive intention the fruit of their actions may not matter as much. But objective morality dictates otherwise. In short, holding a positive intention isn't enough, it has to actually effect positive change in the world through our actions. There must be coherence between our thoughts and actions. The phrase "the road to hell is paved with good intentions" is appropriate in that one without a critical mind and vision might suppose that a good intention is all that is needed to positively impact the world around them. Hitler might have believed that purging humanity of lower races was a good intention, but since this belief did not acknowledge free will choice, he caused untold harm. Doctors who are ignorant of cures for cancer might think that chemotherapy and radiation is a good thing, but due to their ignorance and limited knowledge, they cause harm and suffering overall. Blind belief in one's intentions alone leads to many harmful actions in the world. The cabal's matrix of control is founded on destroying a person's capacity to think critically so that they never realize they are being used as pawns through illusions of good intentions. Therefore, only by bravely seeking the whole truth and penetrating the shadow self, can we reconcile our harmful actions of the past and stop the wheel of karma. While many in the awakening community have grasped the importance of positive intentions and loving thoughts, an essential foundation for servicing others, a moral and enlightened being looks for the effects of these causes in the world. A musician cannot just hope to play well on the day of a performance and choose to never practice. Instead, they must try out their good intentions and see what actually happens, always striving to correct their mistakes so as to improve their performance. Similarly, we who intend to be service to others must be brave enough to look at the fruit of our labors, else we succumb to moral blindness and unwittingly harm our fellows under the guise of positivity. Consider Gonzales' position, wherein he always wanted to help others and joined the military thinking that it would be a good way to do so. But for whatever reason, he never took the time to reflect on the fruit of his actions with enough investment so as to realize he was not actually serving others. And so we too must do this self-reflective work so we can gain knowledge of what we have actually done with our noble intentions, and most especially change ourselves when errors are found. This is what Carl Jung called shadow work, saying that those things we refuse to become conscious of rule our lives as fate. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. C.G. Jung. The ability to self-reflect and analyze requires an active mind, something that the false New Age movement has also tried to get most of the awakening ones to abandon. Looking into the mirror, facing reality. We are told that we don't need to think critically or rationally, that to do so is lowering our vibration, but is this really true? How can we really know if our good intentions help others if we never do the work of self-reflection? Is it negative to admit to ourselves we made a mistake? It seems illogical and unrealistic to suppose that we can make forward strides in servicing others if we never look to see what our actions begot in the world. How can a musician or chef become better without feedback and opening their minds to the truth of their actions, so long as they are open to feedback from others? If raising our vibrations means we become more aware of the world around us, then surely being critical and honest with ourselves is a more evolved course of action than rejecting reality under the guise of staying positive. The false New Age movement's tenet of getting out of your head and into your heart is contextually used in a way that supposes we need not become aware of what our deeds have done to the world. False prophets tell us to feel the truth, and when hard questions are asked about specifics, we are told that this is the mind seeking proof and a product of ego. But surely it is more egocentric to ignore reality under the premise of blind faith than it is to honestly look at the whole picture and seek to understand something beyond a good feeling. For those of us seeking to ascend and increase the number of 300,000 to the greatest figure possible, it seems more productive to balance our good intentions and feelings with an honest appraisal of what is happening around us. And the hard truth is that most people in the world today are beneficiaries of selfishness and harm, albeit unwittingly. That is to say, most of the goods and services we enjoy in the society are made possible by the harm and suffering of others. The computer used to write this analysis was made in a factory in China where people are worked so hard they have to use netting around the facility to prevent workers from committing suicide. We pay our taxes because to not do so means suffering personal hardship, yet these funds go towards war and energizing the engines of destruction of the cabal. We turn a blind eye to the hardship of others, seeking material pleasures for ourselves while scores of people suffer hunger and disease in other parts of the world. And these are only a few world stage examples to choose from. As individuals, all our hands seem to be stained red with the hardship of others, but again all without us consciously choosing to do these things. And some will say that raising these points is negative and unkind, that speaking these things in and of itself is harmful. But is it unkind to reveal how our actions affect others? Personal note: I found it difficult to have this discussion without putting a mirror up to ourselves, taking a long and hard look at what we see. I do not intend to cause others distress or make people feel uneasy, but speaking as someone who has gone through addiction, it is not possible to heal and change without facing reality. And I think the basis of any addiction is unconsciousness, especially our addiction to a society fueled by the hardship and suffering of our fellows. Breaking the cycle of addiction to harm and selfishness. As a people, we must detoxify ourselves from those things that cause harm and suffering to others even though we did not consciously choose them. We all grew up in a world where it seemed like we had no choice but to live a selfish life and feed the status quo in the process, but those times are coming to an end. Now it is a matter of facing the harder truth, which seems to be, if we really want to ascend with the earth, we have to stop making excuses and change ourselves regardless of how uncomfortable that might feel at first. And as hard as facing that choice might seem, there is hope in working together. For the individual, it is difficult to go against the grain of socially acceptable indifference alone, because if we stop paying our taxes and participating in the cabal-run government, it might mean financial hardship and loss of social prestige. We may lose friends and family who think we are crazy or unpatriotic. But when we band together as an awakening people, the burden becomes easier to bear. And if we gain key knowledge and understanding to learn why this change is needed, not just having blind faith, others will soon see why change is actually the path of least resistance, and join the ranks of those who have reclaimed their sovereignty in a world of socially acceptable slavery. Given all this, the reason why the number of ascended people is so low seems to be clear. Many of us have been lulled into a false sense of accomplishment. Despite the fact we have made great strides, we can't stop now. We must with all our beingness make the hard choices we may have ignored in the past because they were too hard to bear. We must be willing to face ourselves and move forward in servicing others, even if it goes against the grain of popularized selfishness. The fact is, making the full transition to service to others means all those friends and family who are still unwittingly servicing themselves will most likely turn away from us. We must decide, is it better to suffer in hell with others, or strive for heaven even if it means walking alone? But the good news is the path of wholehearted service to others is not a lonely one. And while we may lose touch with those closest to us for a time, eventually they might learn from our example and take their place alongside us. We will undoubtedly make new friends and find new soul families as each of us turns around and starts rowing our boats in harmony with all that is. And like Gonzalez, we will have the sureness and confidence of one who knows who they are, and where they are going, filled with the joy of knowing this is our true life's purpose and path. Slavery versus sovereignty effects on the sun and earth. It has been said that out of the animal kingdom, humans are the most powerful beings for affecting the physical world. It has been shown that through the power of coherent consciousness, heart-mind coherence, violence can be diminished. And it has been suggested that consciousness can also have a powerful effect on weather and seismology, actually stabilizing the Earth and solar system by way of coherence. Dan Winter, in a presentation regarding the galactic history of DNA, stated that when slavery consciousness finally took over the planet in pre-Diluvian times, during Atlantis, the Earth's energetic grid destabilized, causing massive upheavals and one of the many great floods of that time. And according to the law of one as well as the tenets of natural law, since free will cannot be completely suppressed, slavery as we know it today is more truly a symptom of ignorance and disempowerment than overt oppression. What this means is that no one can truly enslave another, only offer them the illusion that slavery is real, and through trauma and the limitation that comes with it, we can falsely believe that we have no other choice but to be enslaved. Yet every slave has the choice to reject their master's orders, even if doing so means pain and death. And while these choices are seemingly not beneficial when only looking at the limited context of physical life, when one maintains control over their consciousness, refusing to acquiesce to slavery, they retain body/mind coherence, sovereignty, and act as a stabilizing force for energetic changes on the Earth and solar system. Given these suppositions, it stands to reason that as humanity removes the shackles of victim consciousness and regains self-mastery and the sovereignty that comes with it, they will literally act as a stabilizing force for the coming solar event and resulting Earth changes. Thierry told Good that if the world shakes around him and Wilcock, the less than optimal timeline would have been chosen by the collective. This seems to imply that if an optimal timeline has been chosen, the solar event will not produce catastrophic Earth changes. And given the principal interconnectedness discussed above, the choice to face oneself and gain self-mastery is not only a personal choice to ascend but also one that will profoundly affect life on Earth as this transition takes place. Disclosure and the shift. Disclosure is an important part of the shift for many reasons, several of which have already been discussed. Consider that Gonzalez had a mini full disclosure event when he accepted the offer to know himself fully. This provided him a self-reflective venue that made the errors of his ways conscious, empowering him to make changes that ultimately caused a restoration of his beingness, understanding of objective morality, and the wholehearted desire to service others. Full disclosure in a grand scale like the personal full disclosure that each of us must find the courage to do will have a similar effect. The powers that should not be know this all too well and are hoping to delay disclosure for this reason. And while they might be able to prevent an external full disclosure from taking place, the truth about this world is plain enough to see so as to cause an inner full disclosure event for all of humanity. That is to say, we don't need data dumps to see that what we have been doing to each other and this world is selfish and harmful. It is only our collective ignorance and complacency that allows these things to continue. But assuming a full disclosure event does take place, it will make it easier for individuals to bear the personal responsibilities we must all face, because the social fabric of complacency will be destroyed. When enough people realize that we have been ruining the planet and ourselves because of pandemic mind control and the cabal's machinations, a new social fabric will be created that provides us the foundation to make personal changes. The awakening community is probably the womb that this social change will spring forth from. But at present it is still greatly divided by egoism and false beliefs that prevent coherence from empowering the individual with social support. We're too busy fighting about minor things in an effort to maintain our personal beliefs, a selfish choice, than to see the bigger picture we all have in common. Arguably full disclosure will be easier for the individual, but we need not wait for that event to begin the self-reflective process. Also, consider that the engines of cabal control are fueled by those of us in the system who pour our life energy into it unwittingly. It is the individual's ignorance and addiction to social conformity that prevents personal changes that would cut off the energy from the matrix of control. As such, those of us who are already possessed of knowledge that is equivalent to full disclosure should take this as a humbling moment to work hard at changing ourselves. In doing so, we cut the ties of energy to the system while also becoming trailblazers for our sleeping brothers and sisters who still defend their consciousness with walls of ignorance. Conclusion. The concepts discussed above regarding the harvest are controversial, as there are some who propose that no real personal work is needed to evolve and grow. The ascension will happen even if an individual hasn't gained the required energetic coherence, but I think there is enough evidence to consider that this idea may not be valid. Perhaps that will be the case, I cannot speak with absolute certainty. But I do think regardless of whether ascension happens or not, we can right now do the inner work and benefit ourselves and the planet at large. I feel that this is an empowering perspective to contemplate. There are so many problems we face as a species and as custodians of the Earth Mother, most of which can be solved by individuals gaining self-mastery and working together with their fellows to change the world for the better. Almost all of the hardships we have faced over the eons were made possible because we, the custodians of the planet, haven't taken up this duty to protect and service others wholeheartedly. But wouldn't it be rewarding to do so? Imagine a world where a growing population of people find within themselves the caring to change their ways and make strides, heal their fellows and the earth. Whether or not the ascension happens, in this sense, isn't as important, for it is something that is in the future, which tends to distract us from the present. Why not focus on the here and now and be all we can be, breathing life into the noble intention of servicing others with honor and respect? I, for one, intend to do just that. And instead of walking alone, I think there are an enormous number of people who would love to do the same. We need not wait any longer. We need not hold back our light from shining through the darkness, because we really are the ones we've been waiting for, and to me, that is very encouraging. Thanks for listening and watching. Subscribe and share.